Welcome back, everyone, to Neighbors in the Network. I'm James Pinedo, your host. Today, we're joined by a very special guest, Mandi Broadfoot, the Development Director at Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs. Mandi, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. So you were actually nominated by our own Natalie Bezic, and we got together with Natalie beforehand, and she had a little introduction for you. So I'll just introduce you to everyone at home listening. Mandi has shot up as one of the network's rising stars in development. She had an impressive career at Hobby Lobby, their corporate HQ. While she is new to development and fundraising, her experience has lent itself to her quick success at the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs. She has a sharp mind for how to communicate impacts to donors and how to engage them in meaningful ways, which can sometimes feel difficult to do in the policy space. So again, Mandi, thank you.
Thank you. That was a lovely intro. Thank you, Natalie.
Yes, thank you, Natalie. Okay, so I am so interested, especially to hear about your perspective coming, I think it was 14 years in Hobby Lobby, that's a long time in any organization. And now you're going on 2 years now with the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs. So that seems like just such a fascinating perspective to bring to this liberty movement. And so I'm so fascinated to hear more from your story. Could we start out? Tell me a little bit, what's your background? How did you grow up? How did those formative years shape you?
So I grew up in a small town in southeast Oklahoma, and I was very close with my family, and they taught me, you never meet a stranger. Asking questions and making other people feel important is a great way to meet friends and get to know people. And I was active in my church and my community, and I've just always had a love for people and just kind of a natural curiosity about what they do and what made them who they are. So I think that was a natural transition into development. And that's just kind of a short snippet.
Yeah. So what did you see yourself, like, what was your path when you were high school and college? How did you see yourself fitting in, professionally?
Well, I read a lot of books about entrepreneurs and women in the workforce. And I had an uncle that took me and my cousins traveling, and I like to travel. And that led me to a dream job at Hobby Lobby, where I traveled. I built relationships with vendors, and I did product development in the soft lines department. And I loved that. I love the Greens. They're very philanthropic. I had a wonderful boss, and I grew a lot there in a lot of different ways. But once a month, David Green would have a buyers meeting, and he would have various charities or organizations that were philanthropic that he donated to come and present to us, their stats and how they'd grown and what they were doing with his investment in their organization. And afterwards, he would stand up and say, when you do a good job, this is what I get to do. So keep doing a good job. And that was very meaningful for me. Though I loved the job itself, the purpose behind the job and knowing that I had a hand in so many charities and philanthropies around the world gave me meaning and drive behind what I did. And honestly, that's what ultimately made my decision to come to OCPA, because I felt like the world was going bananas. And how could I do anything about what's going on in DC? And when I learned more about the impact that OCPA was having in Oklahoma and how that could have an effect around the country because of the sister organizations within SPN, how we share ideas and we help get policy across the finish line, and we encourage each other to do big things and make things happen. And that, in effect, holds DC accountable for the crazy that's going on. So that made me feel like I could have a hand in all of that. And so as much purpose and drive as being a part of David Green's philanthropies and charities, it was kind of a similar way to segue into being a part of something big and very purposeful and very meaningful, and giving my children the opportunity to build a business like David did one day. I want them to be in a place, in a country, in a state that rewards individual initiative and that really champions people with ideas and gets government out of their business so that they can thrive as an entrepreneur. So
Wonderful. So many threads to pull on there. I'll start off. So you saw yourself as an entrepreneur growing up? That was like something that held your interest. Is that what I heard?
I really liked the freedom that entrepreneurs had to come up with an idea and build a business, and that the American dream was championed. And I just saw that slowly slipping away, or people were having to work harder and harder to be able to do that. And though I didn't start my own business, working for David Green was like working for the entrepreneurs that I read about. And then wanting to be able to preserve our freedoms in such a way that maybe my kids could, start cutting frames with a $600 loan in their garage and build that into $1 billion company, was so inspiring. And so even though I didn't start my own company, working for him was like a dream come true, being able to have him as a mentor, if you will. That
makes complete sense. That same sort of spirit, that spark was there. So what was it? Because it seems like it's a big deal. You said you saw that the world was going crazy, and you had been at this great organization that you felt fulfilled with for a long time, and you had some real impact. Congratulations on, I was looking at the list of achievements as I was prepping for this podcast. So many achievements that you had here with Hobby Lobby. Congratulations on that. But it must have been a real tug to join this think tank. What was it that was going crazy? And like you saw people are not able to build their businesses as much anymore. What were you seeing?
So I guess I'll back up just a little bit. When my husband and I first had kids, we had this unspoken agreement that I was going to read the child raising books and he was going to read the policy and world events, and then we would exchange information at night. And so he was reading these policy papers by a local gentleman named Jonathan Small. And we joined a new church when about 6 or so years ago. And, my husband, we visited a Sunday school class, and he's kind of looking around, seeing who all's in the class. And he goes, "Baby, Jonathan Small goes to this Sunday school class." And I said, "Now tell me who that is again." And he said, "Those papers that I read you at night, he is president of that organization." So we got to know them, became friends, became supporters of OCPA. And so that being in about 2016. And then I was always the one that would send my friends these emails of who to vote for on local elections, what was going on locally or internationally. I would be the bold one to post things that no one else wanted to post. And so I already had a natural inclination in my convictions on what direction the world was going and how we could help it, go back to the way the founders set it up. And so when Jonathan Small asked me if I would join OCPA, I kind of thought, at first, well, I don't think so. I mean, I've got a really great career. But then the more I thought about it and going back to feeling that purpose and that drive from what Hobby Lobby was able to do for charities and philanthropies and nonprofits, that kind of made me think, I think this job could give me that same kind of purpose and fulfillment, but on a different scale, because it would be my home state and local improvements that I would have a hand in, being able to help small businesses next door, down the street, across the state. And then that kind of made me think, I think I want to do this. I think I could help here. So that was kind of how that segue happened.
Yeah. Where does that come from? That dedication? First of all, you're very politically aware. You're not, maybe not, I wouldn't say active, but you're sharing, information with your friends, and you wanted to. You had this image of what the founder set up, and it's something that needs to be protected and preserved. Where did that come from? That sort of dedication to that ideal.
My parents were very good about taking us to seminars on, they would take us to see, a flamingo guitarist and make us go down and shake his hand and introduce ourselves. We would have discussions on, how brave was Martin Luther with nailing the 95 Thesis to that door? And what kind of impact did he have in that day and the next week and then the next, generations after that? And same with our founding fathers. How brave were they to make a step onto those boats and cross that ocean and risk their lives for freedom? And then what kind of resonating impact did that have? So it was lots of discussions around the dinner table. They enrolled me in a debate team, and I learned I wasn't one of the top debaters, but it was really good for me to learn how to rebuttal and build an argument and build reasons of why I'm advocating for what I am, and then just not being afraid to be who you are and speak up for your beliefs and values is something I'm so thankful that they gave me. And I hope to pass that down to my kids.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I hope the same for my kids too, to be able to. I think in this day and age, there's so much pressure towards conformity, because there's so much to lose, reputation wise. Maybe not physical wise yet, but reputationally. I mean, we all hear about things going on outside the country and shudder at it, but there's still a lot to lose. On social media, you say something that's outside of what is commonly expect or accepted, and so it's so present. I think it's what driving so many this school choice revolution right now is that people are wanting to create independent thinkers that have agency now. And yeah, I think we have 3 kids, so just thinking about that is so important. So I hope the best. I hope the same, that spark that animates you is passed on to your children. That's wonderful. Can you tell me a little bit more about what your journey has been? So you've led me up to the moment where you joined the movement. How have these last couple of years, almost couple of years, been?
Well, it's been a great ride. It's a little scarier than you think, just
Yeah.
to meet people you don't know and talk about. I think one of my big challenges was wrapping my head around the policy and turning it into a story that would resonate with the particular donor that I was meeting with. And
Mm.
some like to, get in the weeds of how that works and how it came about. And some just want to know, are you protecting our freedoms? Or, great job. We're on the same team. And so it was, it's an art, not a science. There's very little cut and paste that you can do, except I, a lot of people, Jonathan, Rachel in particular, but then a lot of people within this space, especially the first SPN annual meeting that I went to, really drove home, focus on your vision, your mission, and your strategy. And if that is at the heart of all of your conversations, and then, my good friend Jim Walker said, you're really just being a matchmaker between OCPA and the donor. And so if their charitable giving doesn't align with what OCPA is doing, they're not rejecting Mandi Broadfoot. They just don't align right now. And so learning to just shrug it off if they're just not ready, learning to hear no or not now. think you mean not now, which is what I just told myself most of the time. And, before Hobby Lobby, I was in sales for a little bit. And I remember one of my, the higher ups in sales said, and she was very, very successful. She said, the only difference between me and you is that I have heard no more than you have.
Mm.
And so just statistically, the more no's you have, the closer you are to a yes. And so just telling yourself that what I'm talking about will preserve our state. It's good for families. It's good for the individual. It's good for businesses. Who wouldn't want to hear about this? Why wouldn't I want to talk about this? So that's been just part of the journey, just trying to uh, absorb as much information as I can, learn to tell the right story at the right time, and then just not being afraid to ask to invite people into what we're doing, because it truly is an honor to be able to ask them to join what it is that we're doing and accomplishing. And our track record proves that.
Mhm. Mhm. I love so much about what you said. I'm going to take that to heart, that someone that's more experienced has just heard more no's than someone who hasn't. That is powerful. I love it. Tell me though, what other perspectives have you brought from this time that you've spent in the for-profit world, as sales and Hobby Lobby, and as working in business development for Hobby Lobby? Does that lend you a perspective that you can now parse out, like, okay, this is a different perspective than what people who work in the nonprofit world full time have? And then how do you bring those two together in your day to day?
I think being on the business side, particularly as a buyer and having salespeople come to me, I knew what I wanted to hear and I knew what I didn't want to hear. I didn't want to hear vendors begging me for business, and I didn't want to hear the same thing over and over. And I did say no a lot, but once they said something new and of value, it didn't matter how many times I'd told them no before, I could jump on board with that. And so the salespeople that were tenacious and kept contacting me year over year, not with what could we do to improve, but more like, hey, got something new I want to show you.
Mm.
And that made me listen. And so I take that to heart with donors rather than saying the same thing over and over. Maybe you try different things until you find that one thing that they're interested in. You might have someone who is, a doctor, a business owner. He's straight laced. He's not, super interested in this or that, but oh, well, we started this new policy. I'm going to reach out and see if he'd happen to be interested in this. And turns out he was. Turns out I asked for a 3-year commitment for a gift that was twice as much as he'd ever given before. And he agreed to do that 3 years in a row.
Mm. I love that. Okay. And do you see that there's because I'm new to this movement, and so I'm trying to learn these past few months. Do you see that there was a kind of something that was more difficult to pick up as you have this great experience, but was there a shift that you needed to learn now going into this public policy position or working with public policy?
Oh, I still have so much I need to learn. And hopefully I'm learning every day and trying to be a sponge. The policy side of it, I think the most helpful thing I realized was not being afraid to ask the policy team, okay, now what does that mean? Okay, now what does that mean?
Mm.
And what does that word mean?
So powerful. That's so
and
powerful.
and
Asking
then
questions. Huh?
really reading our articles that we write in our Independent Center for Journalism. We have an excellent writer, but I also downloaded the app Speechify so I could have those articles being read aloud to me, if you will, while I was getting ready, in the shower, on a drive, at the grocery store. I listened to things over and over and over to try to help with that learning curve, if you will, from going into a non-policy space into a policy space. And I think the moment that I felt like, okay, I think this is going to work was when I was able to explain anti-SLAPP legislation to a group of moms and they got it.
Nice. I mean, that's hard to describe to anyone as far as I can make. I mean, I'm not an expert, but period. That's great.
Well, it wasn't me. It was just learning to retell the story
Hmm.
that someone else very intelligent wrote.
Way to go. Okay. I like that. I love what you were saying about, ask questions. Ask questions. Like, don't be, I'm internalizing this. Don't be embarrassed to ask a question that's probably in your mind stupid, but probably you only have to ask it once. And and then you're not in the same state you were before. So that's great.
And
What
just
about
go ahead and put yourself out there, at the risk of
mm,
sounding like the only one in the room that doesn't know what this means. What does that mean? And I still have to make myself ask those questions sometimes. But I think when you truly want to learn and when you're coming from a place of curiosity, and then I love going back and telling the person that explained it to me, hey, I said this in a donor meeting and that really resonated. And I
mm,
felt confident asking them to fund what we're doing because I saw their eyes light up and pay attention when I was explaining that. So thank you for explaining that to me. That really helped.
that's great. I'm struck by the fact that you need humility to do that, to say, I don't know what this means, and then go back and say, hey, you helped me by helping me understand that. Humility on both sides of it. I
Mm.
love it. Well, is there a particular moment that you've seen maybe a policy that you all have worked on or some sort of campaign that you've run that's had a specific impact in your community?
So we have had a lot going on, and we work in the immediate and we work in the long run. And one of OCPA's very first things to get across the finish line was workers' comp. And I don't think I really understood how impactful that can be for a business owner until I really started talking to business owners. And they talked about how much we have saved them over the amount of years that they haven't had to pay for the same type of workers' comp insurance as they used to before we got that legislation passed. So that would be maybe on a business side. But then getting to talk to the kids that have benefited from the first two school choice bills that OCPA was able to get passed, which was Lindsay Nicole Henry, which helps special needs children, and then the People for Opportunity Scholarships, which is it's a tax credit for underprivileged kiddos. So the individual puts into the system, and then an accredited school gets to apply for those scholarships. And getting to see the change in trajectory of these children's lives in like North Tulsa, for example, is a very poor community that these kiddos don't have a shot. They're locked in their zip code. They're locked in a school area that is just going to continue this cycle of poverty and low education. But here comes the school choice movement, and this guy opens up a school, and these kiddos are now majoring in math and science and STEM degrees. To see their first graduates, which was only 6 kiddos, toss their caps up after the ceremony was just incredible. It was just moving. And now that we have universal school choice passed, how many more kids are going to throw that cap in the air and know that their life is forever changed because OCPA did their best year after year after year, withstood adversity at the Capitol, adversity from donors, ignored it when people said, there's no way you're ever going to get this done. But we knew it was the right thing to do. So we did it.
Mm, that's wonderful. I love it. I love that image of hats going up in the air all across the state. That's wonderful. Tell me though about something that isn't as maybe it's not bad, but maybe less celebratory, like a time where you've had a challenge, that you've had to really overcome, and asking questions. You've probably been able to avoid most of the really difficult times, but Is there something that stands out that you can help us who are experiencing challenges move forward with your resilience?
You know, I had built this relationship with this gentleman. I think I just found him in the house file and, cultivated a relationship. He gave more. I was really excited about that. And then I met him for a follow-up meeting, and I did the ask, and he just flat told me no. He just said, I am too old to be given that kind of money, and just frowned at me.
Mhm, mhm,
And that was pretty crushing because I was like, well, I thought I did all the steps in a row.
mhm,
And I thought that I, built that relationship, won the right to be heard. I'd done my research. I'd talked to my group on what to ask for. And he has given about 5 times less this year than he did last year, my first year meeting with him. And this was after a big ask. And those things can be so defeating.
mhm.
Um, but, you know, in one of my entrepreneurship classes at the University of Oklahoma, we did these studies on startup businesses. And the professor would always ask, okay, what are they selling? And, you can't just say widgets. You have to really like read into the story. Like the Boston Duck Tours, for example, these fancy duck boats, hilarious tour guides. They make great history stories. They get you engaged. What are they selling? And I said, history. And he said, yes. So it's not like you buy a ticket for history, but that's what they're selling. So what is OCPA selling? We're selling freedom. And so I drove off from that after I was really, really sad in the car because I just couldn't come back from that because I wasn't expecting that harsh of a no. And I just sat in the car and I just turned the car on and I just turned. I was like, I'm selling freedom. I'm selling freedom.
I love it.
Just I'm doing this. And it is hard to be told no, as much as you can tell yourself it's nothing personal. I did the hard work. I prepared. I feel confident in what I'm doing. No's are still hard to hear. But if you don't have something to tell yourself positive after you hear the no, you can get beat down. And just knowing the product that I'm selling is worth asking again and over just helps me get out of that funk a little bit quicker.
Thanks for sharing that. I think that thought process of like, okay, we're down in the dumps, but then why are we doing this? Selling freedom it'll get us riled up again. I love it. Thank you. What about inspirations that have kept you going? Like, do you draw inspirations kind of outside of kind of your own? Like that was kind of an interior inspiration. What about exterior inspirations? Do you draw from there?
I have my kids' pictures. You can see my kids' pictures there, and I have my kids' pictures there. And when I'm, intimidated to make a call, I just kind of stare at those pictures for a minute, and I'm like, I'm doing this for them, and then I just make that call.
Ooh.
So they're probably my biggest motivation.
I love it. That's great. And I wanted to ask too. So, what's you said you and your husband made the deal to compare notes about, you would talk about, you would read about raising children, right? And he would
Yeah.
read about policy. Well, now you have to read about policy. Do you guys, how's information sharing now?
Oh, he probably gets tired of me talking about stuff now. But yeah, I definitely read a lot more than I did before, but it's been great. So
I'm
he's
glad.
not reading child raising books, I'll tell you that. I'm still reading those.
So now it's a two-way street. You're sharing the information about both. I love it. Okay, that's great. Well, what about, things are getting even more divided now, it seems, right? Even left and the right are having, like, look at what's going on in Washington right now with the House. We're not able to communicate very well and be unified about anything. What's something that you wish that we could communicate to maybe people that disagree on us on either side of the partisan divide that would help unify, help us be able to really show why the policies that we're espousing are worthwhile?
You know, people are so divided right now. It's
Mm.
very difficult to have a conversation with someone that disagrees with you because, well, they're not going to change my mind.
Yeah.
So I understand if they're convicted on their side, I might not change their mind.
Yeah.
But if you find someone that has the true heart of a learner, but maybe just their background with which they gained that information was different than mine, then maybe there is an avenue for discussing something. For example, we had a young man who attended our leadership training, the J. Rufus Fears Fellowship Program. We talk about the founding principles of America. We bring in business leaders, probably similar to several other leadership programs in this space. And this particular gentleman was actually asked by his dad, who's a donor of ours, to just attend this education because he appreciates education, but he didn't really know what he was getting into. But he had a very socialist mindset, and he had created this home for recovering alcoholics and recovering drug and alcohol addicts, men, a home for men.
Mhm.
And after he took this course, he said, I realized that addiction to handouts can be just as bad as addiction to drugs and alcohol.
Wow.
So I'm going to change my model a little bit. I'm going to make it to where these guys can earn what my organization gives them, as opposed to just giving it to them.
Wow.
And he was able to see their countenance change because they earned what they had because of their overcoming of their backgrounds, their addictions. So that would be an instance where someone didn't agree with us at first, but because he had a heart of a learner, he was able to change his perspective because of the value our organization brought to him through our teachings and our, reading the Federalist Papers, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think staying focused and rallying like-minded people is very important in this space. I think you either need to work in it, whether that be as an actual job or advocacy, or you need to fund it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't think that someone else is going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that, in effect, will make us stronger. And I don't think we have to worry as much about unifying because we know that we're on the right side. We just need to be sure we are letting people know what it is we're doing. Do they want to join us in the fighting or in the funding of it?
I love it. I also feel inspired after you saying, sharing the story is make sure I maintain and foster the heart of a learner within myself. Don't close myself, because if I'm hoping and asking for people to show that sort of spirit to me, maybe I need to show it to others too. So I like that a lot. Thank you. Well, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges that are facing your state and then maybe the nation as a whole?
Oh, there are so many challenges right now. And I love that OCPA really gets to the heart of it. What can be the most transformational change that we can do? I really lean a lot on our leadership to figure out which problems are we going to tackle. I mean, everybody watches the news. We all see what we're up against on a national and even international level. But I really think the founding fathers set up a good model that if we take care of our own backyard, that will help transform DC. So I don't know that I have any personal solutions for what's going on nationally and internationally, but I do know that we've got some great policies that we have planned to help preserve the freedoms in Oklahoma. And I know that through the network, we have lots of great people that will help us with their ideas. And then we can't wait to pass on our ideas once we get these things accomplished. So that sounds a little vague, but I think the formula to solving the problems is very similar. Find good leadership, rely on that leadership to guide you. We get our board together, we have strategic planning, and we focus on, I'll go back to school choice, for example. You've got, I tell some people, like, Oklahoma's like this river, and you've got all these organizations that are trying to save people that are drowning, right? Like, you've got these kids that need homes. You've got, trafficking that's going on. You've got organizations that are helping pull these people out of this river where they're drowning. Mm-hmm. But OCPA is working all the way upstream to prevent people from ever even falling in the first place. And I think that's what school choice does, as well as some of our other policies: freedom of speech, protecting businesses, making sure our markets stay free, rewarding capitalism. Those things will have a change long-term. And that's what I think is good to stay focused on, is what are the biggest transformational things that we can be working on now that will change the future.
I love it. That's beautiful. I think you not only gave me a picture of what the challenges are, but also what you see is the hopes and goals that you have for OCPA there. That's wonderful. And I can't wait to see it. I love reading your updates that you have every week. So, I put on the Week in Review, and I mean, not your, but OCPA's updates. They're always so inspiring. So I'm really excited by what you say, and I can't wait to read or watch what comes next.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I hope, did we give enough time for those hopes and dreams that you have for the organization? Did you have anything else you wanted to share? Because I'm jazzed, but I want to make sure that we didn't. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Just to grow our reach and grow our impact, and just do what we're doing, just 10x it.
I love it. Okay. Well, last question. Who should we interview next? Who can you nominate for us here on Neighbors in the Network?
I nominate. I nominate Roger Custer.
I love it. I am excited. I haven't chatted with Roger, but I know him. I think we might have messaged on Network Effects, so we'll have to. I'm looking forward to chatting with him. All right. Well, Mandi, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure getting to chat with you. I feel like I've learned so much and I've been inspired. And I know everyone listening is going to feel the same way. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be a part of this space, and it was so great talking to you.
Thanks, Mandi. Let's talk again soon, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, bye.
All right, bye.
Thanks for listening to Neighbors in the Network, an offering from the State Policy Network. We hope that this podcast can serve as a place for empathy, understanding, and human connection. Please let us know about your thoughts in the comments section. And thanks again.